versus the Rams. We'll talk about this coming up next on the Wincinnati podcast.
It's an exciting time to be a Bengals fan.
I'm AC.
We got a special show as always.
The voice of the Bengals. Dan Ford, Willie Anderson, Corey Dillon.
The name of this thing is called Wincinnati, and I'm not going to stop.
Talk to us about that roller coaster season.
I'm still going to give you the same AJ.
I'm going to work as hard as I can to be the best.
Always working ever since I met y'all boy.
I got to get your top 5 receivers. Better, man.
It was good. Watch out for us.
Welcome, man, to the Wincinnati podcast. I am your host, Ace Boogie. Sova is backstage on the ones and twos. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Please, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. We come live every Saturday, or not Saturday, every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. So make sure you lock it in. But you can on Wednesdays catch Sova with his power ranking show as well as the Bengals Post. So we appreciate that. But let's get into today's jam-packed show. There's been a lot of Bengals news, a lot of things that you guys are waiting to hear about. Joe Burrow is back at practice, but the decision on Burrow is something we are going to talk about. Should he play this week? Should he not? Right? Also, looking into the future, we're going to talk about breaking down the Burrow deal, the specifics. We've got Andre Perrotta scheduled to join us, so can't wait to get into those specifics. And, of course, it's Rams week, Monday Night Football, Ring of Honor week. We are going to preview the Bengals versus the Rams coming up next. All right, we are going to now bring in Andre Perrotta. Andre, how you doing tonight, bro?
Doing great, Ace. How are you?
Pretty good, brother. Well, actually, I'm not going to say pretty good because of the Burrow situation. I think we're all on pins and needles right now. But outside of that, doing pretty good, especially with Burrow on the contract for sure. But talking about Burrow, he was on the practice field but did not participate. What are your thoughts on that, bro? He had on the sleeve, he had on his helmet, the White Tiger helmet, but did not really practice or participate. What were your thoughts on that?
I thought, just as initial reaction, it was at least great to see him walk out there, even if obviously he did a couple light throws for the cameras at the beginning, but then was listed as officially did not participate in practice, as you mentioned. But if the alternative was Monday right after the Baltimore loss on Sunday, IR, or if that was at least an option or a consideration to see him at least walking out there with the sleeve on. People say he had the sleeve. He obviously has it on the calf there, as you can see, but it looks like the whole goes up and down the entire leg. But obviously the calf is the issue. But as far as whether he suits up on Monday, you heard him in his presser say he's preparing to do just that. Whether that happens is another story. We'll see. It's day to day, as he and Zach have said. But to answer your question, Ace, if it's just specifically regarding if he plays Monday, I mean, I can't take that other than as a positive sign. Even if he didn't fully practice, he's at least walking out there. If there was absolutely a 0% chance of him playing on Monday, there's no chance he's even out there today. He's out. He's getting additional treatment that he talked about. So whether or not he plays, we'll see. But what were your thoughts on it? I thought at least at a baseline level, if nothing else, it was positive.
No, I agree with you. I think if there was no shot of him playing at all, he wouldn't have showed up. Like you said, he probably would have been out there getting treatment or something like that. I think a little bit of it is also gamesmanship as well, right? Trying to keep up the illusion possibly that Burrow will play if he doesn't play. So seeing him out there, there's a little bit of that gamesmanship. They kind of talked to him about himself being out there, Browning possibly. This is just really technically a Wednesday practice since they are playing, Monday night. So if he is out there tomorrow practicing, doing something in a limited fashion, I think that still creates a pathway for him to be able to play on Monday Night Football. So I do think that it is something that's good seeing him out there. Everybody's going to probably watch those clips that Ryan just put up there just to try to dissect them and say, oh, is he walking with the limp? Or, he looks fine to me. So, a lot of people are going to become WebMD Twitter doctors just from that clip. But was good to see him out there for sure. And so, speaking of Burrow being out there, Burrow had some things to say about possibly playing, as you kind of alluded to earlier, Andre. So we'll go ahead and play that clip now.
Wise, you're planning on playing Monday.
Yeah,
That's your goal.
I'm preparing like I'm going to go out and play a Monday Night Football game. Whether that happens, I don't know, but I'm going to be prepared to.
All right. Well, speaking of people talking about Burrow playing, Zim couldn't be with us here tonight, but he was gracious enough to send us a clip in with his thoughts about the possibility of Burrow playing.
Hello, world. Appreciate y'all rocking with Wincinnati. Appreciate y'all supporting, as always, me and my partner, Ace, producer Ryan. We wouldn't be anything without you guys. So please make sure that you tell a friend to tell a friend about the real Wincinnati. I want to talk about Joe Burrow this upcoming game, Monday night. I don't believe that Joe Burrow should play. I feel like long-term, Joe Burrow is bigger for the city of Cincinnati, for the organization, and all things considered, that you can't risk hobbling this guy out there on Monday night for the world to see at a fraction of itself just because you don't want to go 0-3. There's a world that he could come out there, Aaron Donald and company can make sure that you're still 0-3. So if the Bengals all off season were told that we have a top 5 roster, all off season we didn't have any concerns about any other portion of the team, you mean to tell me at the weakest part of your schedule, we're not entertaining the thought of a backup quarterback? What did you go and get Will Grier for? Why did you have Browning compete against Simeon? To me, I understand that Joe might say he's fine, but I think a competent organization would stay consistent throughout this whole process. They didn't play anybody during the preseason. They kept Jamar Chase out an extra week last year. They kept DJ Reader out an extra week last year. They kept Logan Wilson out extra time. Sam Hubbard probably maybe brought him back on time. But throughout this whole process, I feel like they've given people an extra week. Joe Mixon was another one. They've always stayed consistent with that, and I think the players appreciated that about Zach. Regardless if Joe Burrow tells you that you could play, I just think that a top 5 roster, a coach that's come back from back-to-back AFC championship games, a coach that had a Super Bowl appearance, a coach that has a top 5 roster in football should be able to put together a game plan that puts you in a position to win. And it's up to the players and the people around them to go win this game. After this week, go reevaluate the thing. That will give Joe Burrow an extra 2 weeks to even get more treatment, try different combinations, do different things. I get it. We don't want to go 0-3, but I believe that you could beat the Rams without it. The Rams aren't a familiar foe. One of their run defense isn't one of the better ones in the NFL, and Joe Mixon should have a day. The defense has to step up, stop the run, be able to get them off the field on third downs, and yes, get a turnover on Stafford. I know that I usually don't look at –
Looks like Matthew Stafford just tried to intercept the stream there. He did
lost
like
Stafford.
No, it's all good. I think
that was great.
I think, like he said, going after Matthew Stafford, he is a guy that has been able to turn over the ball. But Andre, let's kind of talk about that, right? Zim kind of talked about should Burrow play or not on Monday Night Football. The Bengals are, as we're recording this, very thin at quarterback, as Will Grier was literally just signed off of the practice squad by the Patriots to their active roster today. So right now, the Bengals only have 2 quarterbacks, one including Joe Burrow. So what are your thoughts? Like now with this situation, does Will Grier not being available, does that change whether or not Joe Burrow should play on Monday Night Football for you or not?
It certainly complicates things. First of all, it's I miss having Zim on too. I love Zim, and I've been following his tweet. I always follow him on Twitter, but I've been following his tweets since Sunday, since the injury, and I've agreed with his comments in general throughout the week, and that's why I was kind of surprised when he said he thinks they should hold him out. Obviously, there's really nothing to dispute or disagree with what Zim just said. I agree with everything, minus the thing that probably at the time when he recorded it. The news hadn't broke yet, but the Will Grier signing, he was signed by the Patriots. I tweeted out that I'm surprised the Bengals didn't protect him, but I think it's erroneous on my part. I think the practice squad protection rule expired a couple years ago, so they couldn't protect him. But they could have also brought him up to their own 53. So it does add a different wrinkle now. The point is, do they call Trevor Siemian, who was within camp, and then cut at cut down day? Because right now, Burrow did not practice. Even if he does suit up, right? You assumed, let's say he would have played on Monday regardless. Grier would have been elevated from the practice squad. So there would have been 3 guys on the roster. Now Grier is gone. So you're going to have another guy coming in regardless. And it likely is going to be Simeon just because he's familiar and it's already Friday, even with the Monday night game. But to the overall question, I really agree. Zim's analysis is spot on. I mean, you don't want to jeopardize the long-term health of Burrow and even the long-term prospects of him being successful in this organization, especially coming off the mega extension he just signed. But I don't want to totally discount him playing on Monday. It's not for a fear of who the opponent is. The Rams are down, although, they handled a pretty game Seattle team in week 1 on the road in Seattle, by the way. They controlled that game from start to finish. Sure. They played with a very good Niners team for an entire half last week too. So they have some talent. Everybody knows future Hall of Famer Aaron Donald in the defensive line, but overall they're a young team. They're well coached, obviously. So it's not a factor of wanting Burrow to play because we don't want to fall to 0-3. Obviously that does play a part. It's if he's healthy and the coaching staff feels like there is not an elevated risk of re-aggravating the injury, the type of player he is, and I don't think he's dumb enough to jeopardize his future career, either his personal health or the team's well-being, to suit up and play. In other words, I think if the decision is at the end of the day that he plays on Monday, I think it's obviously going to be his in conjunction with the organization because of the factors that Zim laid out nicely, that you don't want to jeopardize anything in the long term to avoid an 0-3 start. Having said that, this is a season, right? This is Burrow's first year that he just signed an extension. T is up. There's a question of whether he gets extended. You mentioned DJ Reader. Chido was a free agent. So it's not that it's Super Bowl or bust season, but there was talk of that at the beginning of the season. The goal here is not just to get back to the AFC Championship game or even to the Super Bowl. The goal is to win the Super Bowl and bring home the Lombardi. So it's really ultimately trying to really thread this fine needle of, does he play Monday? I think if all signs go, if he gets into even a limited practice by Saturday's practice, which would be essentially the Friday practice, I think you let him play. Of course, you don't want to compound the injury. You don't want to potentially risk an Achilles, which has happened with Kevin Durant. I know it was in the NBA, but you don't want to expose him to any elevation. So let the doctors ultimately make the call in conjunction with the team and Joe. It's just a big question mark. I don't know. I'm not totally discounting him playing on Monday, and I wouldn't be against him playing. If my basis in answering that is, if they determine that there's no elevated risk of re-aggravating the injury or making it worse or affecting the Achilles, I'm all for him playing, even if it's at 90%, because frankly, he was probably at 90% last week. And in the second half against Baltimore, he looked the same, especially that one move where he did that little jump skip in the pocket. That looked like old Magic Burrow in the pocket. Right. So what do you think? What are your thoughts for Monday?
Man, for me, I've always kind of erred on the side of caution, especially when you're talking about the calf and, the potential Achilles tear. Apparently Aaron Rodgers had a calf injury that eventually led to an Achilles. Whenever you hear the word Achilles, especially after you just signed him to, the deal that we did, making him the highest paid NFL player, you kind of worry about that. And that's why I kind of asked on the last show, is there a risk for an Achilles tear? Like, re-aggravating the calf, I'm not so worried about that, right? Even though I feel like if it is a re-aggravation of what originally happened, it would be like Joe Burrow having that tweak in practice and then playing the next day. So, like, for me, it's just kind of strange to me to go ahead and put him out there, because when it happened in training camp, obviously they had better circumstances to sit him. But it kind of makes me wonder now, because we didn't see Joe after that. And that's the thing for me. Had we seen a drive with him afterwards, and we were able to see how he played, and things that he did after that, I'd be a lot more confident in him playing. But looking at the schedule, man, I mean, you have the Rams, like you said, which are a formidable team. They are, I think, beatable. And if you are planning to run the ball with Mixon, maybe that is something that, if you have Jake Browning out there handing it off instead of Joe Burrow, I don't think that there's any harm in that or putting them at risk. You do have the Titans, though. That's a little bit tougher. And then you have the Cardinals, right? I think that if you are to pick a stretch to sit Joe, now is the time. I think it's the Rams, The Titans, you might lose that one possibly, and then you got the Cardinals. But if this thing was to flare up, let's say in this game, then you're talking about him possibly having to miss the Seahawks, 49ers, Bills. Like, Jake Browning is not beating the 49ers or the Bills. I'll say that right now. Unless it's by some miracle, I just don't see that happening. So if it is a case where sitting him for 3 weeks does something, I think you start it now. If it's a situation where it just isn't going to matter, you might just have to play him in the Rams game. Now with the Will Grier not being there, it kind of makes it like Joe almost has to play, because unless, like you said, unless they go and get Trevor Siemian, who looked horrible against third stringers, what do you really have, right? So, like,
yeah, I mean,
in this situation,
he does have game experience. It's been several seasons since he's played in. Right, he played against us when he played with Denver. He torched us for a couple.
Then he did some stuff with the Saints. I think he was pretty solid with the Saints. So,
but I hopefully it doesn't even come to the fact that he even is touching the field. Assuming he's the one that they call with Grier signing. But you're right about Ace. You made a great point of this stretch, right? If you don't want to discount any foe, especially the Rams, but it is a home game Monday night. To Zim's point that he made, and to your point, the roster is good enough, even with the Rams not being as, the doormat team that everybody thought they were going to be heading into the season. They got some players on that squad. So, but even that, it's a home game. You should be able to beat that Rams team with Jake Browning under center for one game. I agree with that. And then this stretch is too, but you never really want to kind of look ahead. As Joe always says too, it's a week. Every game is its own game, obviously. It's a week-to-week lead just because of injuries. For example, if you saw Cleveland on your schedule next week before Chubb's injury, that's a completely different team with that injury in place. So you hate saying that with injuries, but suspensions come into play, players getting nicked up in practice. Trayvon Diggs just tore his ACL. So it is a week-to-week league. So you hate to say, well, this is a stretch that we definitely can win these games, but that is the reality. You do try to anticipate easier games on the schedule and stretches on the schedule. So if you want to take the cautious approach, not even cautious, but maybe the more prudent approach, as you said, I think this would be the time to do it. One last thing I'll say is, I don't know if this injury or this tweak on Sunday was as severe as the original one. The original one was clearly a strain that they kept him out multiple weeks. As Zach always said at the beginning of that time, several weeks. It ended up being about 5.5 weeks. So clearly this re-aggravation is he's not back to square one. I see a lot of people say, well, if he got injured after 5, he needs at least 5 weeks this time. I'm not a doctor, but I don't think it necessarily works that way. Obviously he needs some time to recoup, as Joe mentioned, but it's feeling better and time heals everything. So hopefully he's able, I just want to see him play. If he's close to 100%, and again, there's no elevated re-injury risk or potentially affecting other muscles and tendons, then I'm okay with him playing. If not, I agree keeping him out this game and potentially even next week in Tennessee, as you mentioned too. So
we talk about protecting the merchandise and the money. Obviously, we brought you on here to also discuss Joe Burrow's contract and how it affects other potential contracts in the future. With this deal, how does it break down in the future years? Like, can you kind of explain how that money is set up for Joe Burrow's contract?
Yeah, so they utilized what's called an option bonus structure, which is what the Eagles did with Jalen Hurts' contract. The Chargers did that with Justin Herbert's extension this summer, and the Bengals did that. The Bengals actually have 5 option bonuses in Burrow's deal. And what that does is an option bonus is treated like a signing bonus. They're going to exercise the option, all those, and so that triggers a payment to the player. So the player gets his money right away, but then the team can prorate that money over years of the remaining years of the contract, and even into some void years that they've added on. So to answer your question, Joe's cap hit this year prior to his extension was just under $10 million. It was 9 point something. With his extension, his cap has actually gone up because he did have a big $40 million roster bonus, which was treated as a signing bonus. They prorated that out. So his cap hit this year is just under $20 million. Not bad. So they currently have right now about a little over $12 million in cap space. Looking ahead to next year, they effectively have about $80 million in cap space. They only have 36 players under contract for next year. A lot of these guys, a lot of the big name guys we mentioned are already, in their last year of their deals. I think if an extension is not agreed to between when the season ends, hopefully with the Lombardi Trophy, and when free agency starts, I think he's an ideal candidate for a franchise tag. Although I say ideal in the sense that it's not ideal, but just in terms of keeping him around for at least one more year. But I'm firmly on extending Tee Higgins at a market rate deal, maybe a DK Metcalf or Terry McLaurin. I've tweeted out some proposed contract extensions for T. But he's got a very good agent. David Mulligetta is a top agent, and he really fights for his players in terms of guaranteed money. The Bengals bent on that structure with Joe Burrow. Question is, does T have the leverage? I think he does. I think he's a special player. I think T's probably a top 3 player overall on the team. Maybe top 4 if you include a defensive player like Reader. But it's clearly Joe, Jamar, T on offense, clearly. But I know I'm going off here a little bit, but 36 players are only currently under contract for next year. So they have about $80 million in cap space. You include the 7 or maybe 8 picks because they're going to get a comp pick for the Jesse Bates signing for when he signed with Atlanta. So 8 draft picks, you're already at 44, and then you're going to fill out the roster. So effectively, they still have around $75, $80 million in cap money going into next year. That's with Burrow under contract. That's including Jamar's 4th-year salary. They could extend him. It's not his 5th-year option yet.
That's my question there. T and Jamar at the same time, like with Jamar wanting to kind of reset the market, his comments about Justin Jefferson, and T, you're talking about possibly either franchising or extending him. What's the better scenario? Like franchising T and extending Jamar with that big contract, or how do you think they could do that?
Well, I hate the franchise tag. The franchise tag just secures the player, but the player hates it obviously because it is guaranteed money. But an injury that's it. They're not going to their chances of signing a long-term extension go down. So they hate it because it's just a 1-year guarantee. The team doesn't like it from the fact that is a stick in the mud figure on your cap. That is an immutable. Once you put the tag on, unless you agree to an extension, that it's going to be around $22 million if they tag T. You can't massage that number to make it a little bit more palatable. Whereas if you extend him, which I'm in favor of. Been in favor of extending him since last year. His cap number is not going to be nearly as high as the franchise tag number. So to answer your question, there is a way to do it. The way they've structured this Burrow deal, I mentioned the option bonuses. They've used 5 option bonuses. So his cap hits really don't balloon up to $50 million until about the 2025 season. It comes in about $46 million. But by the time we get to 2025, the salary cap is going to be maybe around 260, 275. It's at 225 now, 224.8. $224.8 million. So next year, even if you project that out to $250 million, again, that leaves the Bengals with about $75 to $80 million in cap space. So the way I would approach it is extend T and then also extend Jamar. Now, the one thing that complicates this is you mentioned Justin Jefferson. He's entering his 4th year. He was extension eligible this year, but he hasn't agreed to his extension yet. So I really think these other top guys are waiting for Justin to reset the market to top Tyreek Hill's deal. Justin will be clearly clearing $30 million on average in his new deal. He's earned that. He's an incredible player. I think then Jamar's going to want to beat that. And then I think T falls in line with those other guys like, top 10 receivers, Metcalf, McLaurin, those types of players, and A.J. Brown maybe even. And there's a way to do it because of the way you can structure these contracts with signing bonuses that can be prorated out. Now you are kicking cap dollars down the road, but you're relying on the fact that contracts are going to be coming off the book and the cap is going to be continuing to rise those years. So there's a way to do it. Now you become top heavy on offense, but I think it's worth it. You got Joe, you got Jamar, you got T. That's a trio that if you want to keep around for a half decade, there's a way to do it. And it could really become a dominant trio in the NFL. I really think it can.
Does that push DJ Reader or Chido out the door though? Under that scenario, like what does that look like for Reader and Chido?
It makes it tough. There's a way to do all of it, but in reality, if they're going to do T and Jamar, which I would advocate for, then the likelihood of being able to re-sign both Chido and DJ, who I love as players, are great guys too. I think that decreases for one of them. Now, I think they can get one of those guys done, but the reality is, if this plays out the way I think with T, the way I think it played out with Jesse, where offers were made, no agreement was reached, obviously, the tag is applied, then they can't apply that tag to either Chido or Reader. And those guys are going to want to test the market. Like Chido is on such a steal of a deal. He's making just over $7 million. He's a number 1 corner, even coming off his ACL. He's going to be 29 years old or 28 next year. He's going to want to get that one, probably with him, that one last multi-year, really rich deal. Maybe that comes from Cincinnati. Who knows? I hope it does. There's a way to do it. But he's going to be, it's a passing league. He's going to be in demand next offseason if he doesn't get extended. And so is DJ. I hope they can maybe come up with maybe a 2-year extension for DJ and even Chido, but I think Chido's at least going to want to test the market to get more of a market rate deal.
Well, Andre, that is why we brought you on, man. You are the expert. I didn't even know that the Bengals were going to be able to have that much more cap space with the floor raising. But just wanted to thank you for joining us. Before you get out of here, please let the people know where they can find your stuff.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, Ace, and I always appreciate you having me on, especially with Zim. Hopefully next time we can have Zim on too.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, I'm just on Twitter. I tweet out, like you said, proposed contracts. I'll retweet out what I think would be a good deal for T. But it's just on Twitter. It's just my first name, Andre, and then Perrotta, Perrotta 13 is my Twitter handle. So yeah, always appreciate you having me on, Ace. Really, really enjoy chatting it up.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Andre. Who day, brother?
Who day?
All right, Andre Perrotta. I love having him on, man. He's able to explain everything. I feel like, he is the guy for that stuff, man. I don't understand how he doesn't have his own website and everything going on right now. He really is able to break that stuff down. So we appreciate him for coming on. Thank you, Andre, once again for joining us here. Let's talk about how the Bengals can defeat the Rams on Monday and try to get to 1-2. So let's talk about this, guys. Obviously, this is the game. We're not going to avoid it. We've got to kind of talk about this. Some of the ways that the Bengals can defeat the Rams, me and Andre kind of talked about it, right? You talk about the fact that this is a team in the Rams on defense, even though they're pretty good in total yardage and stuff like that. They're ranked 12th currently in the NFL, but they are susceptible to the run. This is something that the Bengals have really done well, but they just haven't done enough of it, right? We talk about going back to 2020 or 2019 season right before getting Joe Burrow. What did they do in that Steelers game when no one gave them a chance with Ryan Finley? They ran the ball. When you look at what they did against the Panthers last year with Joe Mixon, where he ran wild and went crazy, they ran the ball. What can they do to protect Joe Burrow? Run the ball. This is a game where they have to be able to run the ball, play smart on defense. Zim kind of talked about forcing a guy like Matthew Stafford to give you the football back. They were able to do that in the Super Bowl. Now, obviously, this is Monday Night Football. We're about 2 seasons removed from that. But Matthew Stafford is a guy that can give you the ball back. The thing where I think the Bengals have to watch out for this Rams offense is they're going to have to contain them. They're going to have to do the bend but don't break defense against these guys. They're going to have to win the turnover battle. But for me, it starts with Joe Mixon. Now, on the flip side, if it is Jake Browning out there, you don't want to completely be one-dimensional, right? Like you still want to have a heavy balance of the passing game, a little bit in there. Maybe you throw some quick screens in there. I know people don't want to see the bubble screens anymore, but hey, with Jake Browning in there, you might have to. But here's the other thing. Even though Jake Browning doesn't have the strongest arm, there's no concerns with the calf. There's no concerns with him planning. Maybe this can, in a weird way, open the playbook up a little bit more because the Rams do have a secondary that you can expose. You're talking about a secondary that no longer features Jalen Ramsey anymore. They've got some corners on there that you can take advantage of. And, hey, you still got the Migos. You still got Irv Smith, who could be a safety blanket for Browning as well. Irv Smith almost had a very big reception. Unfortunately, wasn't inbounds, but those are things that maybe they can possibly go to. But you're going to have to be creative. You're going to have to pull out trick plays. You're going to have to get in your bag. And that is what this staff is going to have to do. This is still a very talented team on both sides of the ball. But one of the most important phases may also be special teams. They're going to have to be able to get some field goals and let McPherson help out a quarterback if Joe Burrow is out of this game. Even with Joe Burrow in, they may have to use him as well. So special teams is going to be important. And then field position. Can't preach that enough. It was terrible for us against the Browns. If they can use that to their advantage with Brad Robbins doing some coffin punts or something like that to make sure that the Bengals are in good field position on defense and on offense, they'll be fine. So I think if they can control the clock, I think if they can run the ball, if they can play solid defense, if they can win their one-on-one matchups with their weapons, I think the Bengals can come out of this with a win, but they're going to have to slow down this Rams offense. And the only way you can do that, running the football. They do have the wide receiver that's blowing up everybody's fantasy leagues right now. I think you definitely have to key in on him. You cannot let him beat you. You also have to watch out for Tutu Atwell, whereas you had a Zay Flowers that made some mistakes. But I think that this defense can do it, and I think that they're also going to be able to rush the passer. We didn't do that last week. They've got to be able to do that. They've got to be able to cook. And speaking of cooking, let's toss it to the folks at Midwest Best Barbecue. Shout out to Midwest Best Barbecue. I'm jealous that I didn't get to hit it last week. I know I missed the Bengals game, but I also missed those Uno wings. I missed those G-Funk wings. I missed the brisket fries. Don't miss out. If you're in the Cincinnati area and not in the Florida area like myself, don't waste an opportunity to stop by Midwest Best Barbecue. They're at 669 Justice Court in Loveland, Ohio. Stop in and let them know Ace and Zim sent you. And make sure you get one of those Arnold Palmers for me. If you don't know what an Arnold Palmer is, you go over there, you make your order at Midwest Best Barbecue. They hand you the cup. Go over there and get you some of that sweet tea. Throw in some of that lemonade. I guarantee you will not regret it. It's amazing. Check out those folks once again at Midwest Best Barbecue. You can also order online at MidwestBestBarbecue.com. Check them out, get some good food, and have a good time. Our other sponsor for the show is Fans of Cincy. Make sure that you book your trip with Fans of Cincy at fansofcincy.com. Now we do have that Titans game coming up. You could be in Nashville, making sure that you're at the tailgate. They have an open bar, food buffet, live DJ. You do not want to miss that. They also, if you haven't paid for your travel and got your tickets and you're scrambling right now to try to do that, they will take care of all of that for you for any road games coming up this season. Make sure you do that. You can get everything planned for the family. It's a very nice thing. You get an itinerary. You can contact them with any kind of questions that you have at Fans of Cincy. Contact them at fansofcincy.com and sign up today to get your tailgate tickets, your trip to the game, all of that. They're going to have an open bar, food buffet, live DJ. They're going to be in San Francisco. Any game that you want to see, they're going to be there. So definitely be sure to hit it up and meet me at Jacksonville because I'm going to be at that game. But make sure you book that at fansofcincy.com. Final thoughts, man. I hope Joe Burrow plays. That's my final thought. I hope Joe Burrow plays and stays healthy. But if not, man, Joe, rest up. Definitely be sure to get right. And we're going to be good, Bengals fans. I know Who Dey Nation, this has been a little bit of a tough season, the kickoff, but things are going to be okay. Even if Joe is out this game, as soon as Joe is healthy and everything is running, this team can definitely make a run. So make sure that you guys tap in. Obviously, with it being a Monday night show, you will definitely want to tap in with us on Tuesday at 7:30. We do this every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. If you're listening to this on YouTube, definitely be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, check us out. Or if you're listening, check us out on YouTube at the Wincinnati YouTube channel. And then if you're trying to listen to us on your way to work, say you didn't have enough time to watch this video like most of us do throughout the workday, you can definitely find us in any podcast platform, whether that's Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you can get your podcast. You can listen to us there. Thank you guys for supporting so much. Hopefully our Bengals get a dub. And of course, I've got to end this with a yes, sirski.
It's an exciting time to be a Bengals fan.
I'm Ace.
We got a special show as always.
The voice of the Bengals. Dan Ford, Willie Anderson, Corey Dillon.
The name of this thing is called Wincinnati, and I'm not going to stop.
Talk to us about that roller coaster season.
still gonna give you the same AJ.
I'm gonna work as hard as I can to be the best.
Always working ever since I met y'all, boy.
I gotta get you a top 5 receiver. Better, man.
Good. Watch out for us.